Hi, this is Steve Johandes. I want to welcome you today. Basically, what I'm going to be discussing is our community's current state and the issues we face. I'm a second generation owner who's enjoyed this property for close to 30 years, and I deeply care about this community. And I want to make that clear. Not only did I visit many times over the last 30 years, parents purchased the condo in 1994, but my children as well. This is truly a generational home. Now that I'm privileged to be here 6 months a year with my wife, Diane, we affectionately call this second summer in Sarasota. We spend our summers in Michigan and then our winters in Sarasota, but we truly believe it's the best of both worlds. I've created a website that outlines these items, and it's voteshw.com. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share that with you. So let's share the screen here. And basically, if you look here, is this website has everything that you want. If you go voteshw.com, easy to remember, and just type in the password vote, all lowercase. I believe in Florida's new normal requires good governance and financial management for all condo associations, particularly for the larger ones like ours. This is not only the macro trend that's happening, but it's the trend of the law. The law is not going backwards, it's going forward. We can no longer stick our head in the sand. The trends of the law will force change like we've never had before. We can either choose to start planning now or we can ignore it, but it will happen. So what I've done on my website, if you click on here, there's a Florida new normal. I explain what's happened. I mean, this started with the Champlain Towers collapse, numerous law changes, Senate Bill number 4, the insurance climate, Hurricane Ian, et cetera, et cetera. You guys can read it. And what it really talks about is a need for disaster recovery and other things. So I really want to put this all in context as we go through this. This is that macro trend. But a bit about my philosophies and experiences, first and foremost, is I have a background. I coached 30 CEOs of companies representing about 10,000 employees. I sit on 10 for-profit boards and 1 nonprofit board. I have a deep understanding of leadership. I was an entrepreneur my whole life. I owned a company that had 800 employees. However, I'm concerned that what I'm observing today in leadership is against everything that I believe in. I've always said I meet 3 types of leaders in my business. I meet the smartest person in the room, I meet the micromanager, and I meet the servant leader. The smartest person in the room tends to just do everything themselves. The micromanager tends to do everything themselves and not get others involved. The servant leader is the person who really focuses in on servant leadership, bringing a team together, collaboration, all these things. We have so many talents within this association, and we're just not utilizing them. And we have to remember, the key is our association has 182 members. That's my best count. It's 182 members plus. And I'm going to go into detail how I calculated that. Again, 182, remember that number. You can think about 190, just round it off, but each has talents and skills that they've accumulated over lifetimes. And we need to really understand that and make sure that we take advantage of that. So now let's look at governance. Let's look at how we bring those 182 numbers. Where do those come from? So it's really simple. In a nutshell, and this is on my website, if you click on here, it's really right on the front page, and I lay this out. And if you click on here, you'll go to the file itself, but I'm just going here to make it easier for everybody to understand. So basically, again, this is a visual representation. So here's all the members. Remember, these members are not members I make up. They're in the bylaws. This is how a member is. Basically, if we go to the records, the city of Sarasota, we look at this. Basically, the city of Sarasota actually has these property records. So this is an example of our property record for Unit 832. It shows myself as an owner, my wife is an owner, and then my dad's actually junior, I'm the third, as an owner. So those are 3 owners, 3 members of the association by definition. So what I did was I actually sort of cracked the code, and I won't bore you with all the details on how I did this, but basically what I did was I actually laid out step-by-step instructions for the board so that they could help do this and download this themselves. But I literally took every single record, and this has everything. It shows the owners. So in this example, if we look at all the unit numbers, basically they have owner 1, owner 2, owner 3, and we highlight them all. And we can see that by doing this, all these owners that are listed gets a count of 159 members. So that's a little different than my 152. But again, this changes. This changes all the time. People do different things. Now, why do I say we have 182 or 189 members from that standpoint? It's because what happens is all the items in yellow, there's 28 items that are in yellow, have basically, we don't know how many owners or how many members there are because they're listed as part of a trust. Some trusts have information on them and some don't. So this is where it becomes important in terms of following our bylaws. So if we just make an assumption that in these trusts, each of these trusts represent 2 owners. Okay, so that would give us an additional 23 owners, and that's how we get to the 182 plus, let's call it. But 180, it's clearly not the 30 people that tend to attend board meetings once a month. So let's just make that clear. This is data. This is nothing I'm making up. This is fact. And I've given the board the step-by-step instructions, and this is where some of my frustrations come into play from that standpoint. What I'm going to be going through is I'm going to be going through specifically dissecting misrepresentations that are being made by the current president who's seeking re-election. These are not rumored statements. These are actually in her bio. She actually sent her bio out last night. Specifically, I'm going to be debunking the claim that the board president or her husband keep making, that I'm proposing changes that could lead to a $2,000 to $3,000 monthly fee. Dina's claiming $2,000. Her husband Andre at the February board meeting claimed $3,000. Just to put this in perspective, that's $2.4 million to $3.6 million per year. We only spend $800,000. We will spend $800,000 this year, and that $800,000 is up from about $600,000 last year because of the insurance changes. And this is simply fuzzy math. Hey, I go back to Ronald Reagan. I'm still old enough to remember him, and he popularized that statement. And what does it mean? It came to mean misleading, incorrect, and deceptive calculations. You are not going to see or hear from me any of those 3 things. My things are based on fact. So we start to look at those types of numbers, 2.4 to 3.6 million. We couldn't spend that much money, no matter how hard we try. I would argue that for 99 units, it's just not possible. Moreover, I want to emphasize transparency and a quality that is sorely lacking in this association, particularly this administration running the association. And the prime example of that is, and we'll get into this when we sort of look at the financial records, but this year, our contingent liability on insurance is now $927,000. In the past, in 2019, when we had a compilation report, the last time we had legitimate financial statements, we actually showed a contingent liability of $595,000, which was our deductible. 2 things changed this year. And this has not been made clear to everybody. 2 things changed. Number 1, the replacement cost of the building went from about $12 million to about $16 million, which increased the deductible alone from $595,000 to $800,000. In addition to that, because we moved to Citizens, which is basically state funded as part of that, there is a clawback provision that calls for up to an additional 45% of the premium, or $127,000. Again, I'm not saying the contingent liability is going to happen. I'm just saying it needs to be disclosed to the membership. So that talks to a movement from $600,000 or $595,000 to $927,000, an additional $327,000 contingency that our deductible has rose. So not only are we paying $200,000 more in premium, but we have another $327,000 contingent liability. Again, this is what you would see in an audit, and our president is asking us to waive that. And we'll get into detail on that further. Our community is valued. We can look at a lot of different things, but the highest sale last year was 525,000. The highest sale this year is 650,000. So you can do the math. It's 100 units. That puts our range someplace between 50 and 65 million. There's other units that are for sale now that are higher. Again, you can pick whatever number you want, and that number is going to go up and down, but we're no longer this tiny association that units are selling for $200,000 or $250,000. It's just not happening. We need to reflect this in our thinking and our go forward strategy. So the question is, do you want non-transparent leaders running that type of investment for you? So we'll go into that in terms of the financials, et cetera. I've literally spent hundreds of hours of time on this. And as a second generation owner, being here almost 30 years, the reason I've spent 100 hours is because I deeply care and I want to see this place. I've had the privilege of now being able to semi-retire here, and I want to see that opportunity to exist for my children as well. And my parents have served this community since 1994. And I plan on serving it the rest of my life. So I have better things to do with my time. We all do. But I wouldn't trade this for anything. And I want to go back just to give you a perspective of a letter that was back in 2005. And it's from, actually, I got to find it here. It's from Buzz Alden. Here it is. And this was at a time that the owners were offered $1 million per unit. Back in 2000, it's 2000, it may have been 2004, 2005. And Buzz Allen, my dad gave this to me. I give this to you guys. They rejected the offer. And I will tell you that I would say to you, I would reject it today. But here's the thing, and this is on my website. So as we look at this, I've been going through all this detail, and I've gone through the Sarasota County records. I've pulled up those records. I've done the analysis. I'm happy to publish that on my website in terms of the member list. If you want it for whatever reason, the last member list on Sarasota Harbor's West official website is, if you look at this member list, August of 2022. I mean, this is just not a way to run an association. And then what's even worse about this member list is this member list doesn't tell the full story. This doesn't show who the 182 members of the association are. And then furthermore, it doesn't show who the voters are, that is where this whole point of contention really started. Is I was asked to do some things. I was asked to basically change my entire parents' estate planning tools, and so I could be called an owner. And it just wasn't right. It was demanded of me. I finally did it. I just said, hey, I did it in January and I am on the deed. It's there, but it's just, there's all kinds of tools that are out there, but there is an inherent assumption by the association management company that there is a one-to-one relationship between an owner and who is on this list. And that is just not true. There's only one email per member, or per owner, I should say, and per unit. And that's not right, because some of these units can have 2, 3, 4, 5 members of them. Our unit itself has 3 members to it: myself, Diane, and my father. All 3 of those members should be getting emails about association correspondence and what's going on in the association. Instead, I'm the only one who gets those. Now, my father gets them as a board member. That's a different subject, but the whole issue, this list is not a complete membership list. These are the people who have a vested present interest in the fee title of the association per the bylaws. Clear violation of the bylaws, clear violation of Florida law. And it's such a significant violation that right now I requested this information back on January 26th, which really started all this confusion. And the board still has not provided it to me. And even the board president stated in the March newsletter, or February newsletter, I should say, that this is a new concept. No, it's right in the bylaws. And I'll show you exactly where it is in the bylaws. Qualification for membership, all people owning a vested present interest in the fee title. Okay, voting rights. And then basically, this is where it talks in the event of joint ownership. Written remainder of the joint owner. This requires the type of documentation that we are just doing today. Majority of voting rights. Voting rights become super important. How elections happen, all those different things. And then where it even goes further is in the amendments. Basically, the key section is something called Section 9 in the bylaws. Each condominium unit is entitled to one vote. In the event of joint ownership or a trust, such trust shall designate in writing an agent authorized to vote and cast the unit's vote. Why is this important? It's important because everybody in Fort Myers right now is going through this problem. Who is authorized to decide what we are going to do on a go-forward strategy when a disaster strikes? I'm not saying a disaster happens, but Hurricane Ian could have turned the corner here. We escaped a bullet, and I'm saying to you, this is the time, because this is where all things are going. This is the trend, the macro trends that are happening in Florida right now. And for Gina to say that this is something new, that something I made up, something that this is real. What even makes it more real is that once we went over $500,000 in revenue, which we did in about 2018, and I'll go into that in my financial analysis, we became subject to rules specifically related to an audit that we weren't subject to before. Basically, Florida classifies condos into 4 groups: those under 150,000, 150 to 300,000, 300 to 500,000, and those over 500,000. Each of those has different requirements. We are in the top category. And if you think about it, majority of condos in Florida, 75% of the condos in Florida units, again, not HOAs, condominium association unit, are less than $500,000. That's just the way it is. So we have a standard that is higher. So when we look at this, I even took the effort of actually, if you want to look at my analysis of the bylaws, I even took the effort of actually typing the bylaws. The entire bylaws are typed up in writing. This is searchable by me. I use it to do different analysis of it. I've gone through it. My legal folks use this. It's just something that we sit here and focus on these little things like, well, should we have trucks? Should we not have trucks? Should we do this? Should we do that? and we're missing the big stuff. We're missing the things that really matter in regards to voting rights, in regards to quorums. I mean, you can't, if you don't know who the voters are, you can't have a quorum. And then we also have something called the membership meeting. So membership is a defined term. There's 2, if we go back to this whole idea of who is a voter and who is a member, is those 182 members come down to 96 voters. Remember, the double units have 2 votes versus 1. They also pay higher fees, et cetera, but that's how you get to 99 votes. So this is what matters right here, these 99. When we have our annual meeting coming up on 3/31, basically we have to have a quorum of those members, which means a quorum is 51. And here's the members that actually attend meetings. When Dina says, hey, we have 30 members at this meeting, that's a pretty small list. And then of those 30 members, they only represent about 20 votes, because a lot of them may be husband and wife that are at those meetings. That's 1 vote. So what we really have is, you can really think about it, the way the governance is laid out in the bylaws is you essentially have the legislature, which is the voters. Those voters are appointed by the members. So think about them as the legislative branch or Congress or whatever you want to say, appointed by those 182 members. And then basically they interact with the board. Now, however, the bylaws also talk about essentially, hey, If 51 members get together or 51 voters get together, they can call a special meeting. The board is not the only people that can call a special meeting, and they can ask the board to address whatever they want to address. It's also, again, the 331 meeting is not a board meeting. It is a member meeting. I plan on talking at that member meeting. These are critical issues that have to be understood. All this information is on the website. And let's go why this is critical information. Here's a financial summary of the past 6 years. And let's be very clear, 2018, this is when we start to crest the revenue issue. This is the 500K. Hey, I'm a retired CPA. I know this stuff. And the fact that we're being led to believe that an audit is just a point in time between point A and point B, just not true. An audit is so much more than that. During an audit, people look at minutes. I applied the same principles. I've done an audit in my career. I've done many. I looked at this as an auditor would look at it. And essentially, revenue, 500,000, we start getting, and then I look for the minutes. Minutes don't exist on the website. And we can see that right there. We're missing the audit waiver as well. Again, total reserves at that time were 338. 2019 revenue, $1,012,000. And this was the year we did the elevators. And total reserves 400 after the elevators were done. Here's the facts. You guys can read all these, but here's the contingent liability. And then what's even more concerning is none of these reserves have anything in there for railing, and the seawall has 43,000. Now let me show you where it gets really interesting. Is we then go to the financials. On the website, again, fact versus fiction. And look at this, all these things, there's no notes to these financials. There's, budget comparisons. I mean, it doesn't even compare it to last year. The financials are just somewhat of a little bit of a joke, but where they did it right for some reason, this is where it gets really crazy. We go all the way back to 2019. There's something buried here called a compilation. This was the last time there was any type of legitimate accounting done. And this is a compilation report. A compilation report is the lowest level of assurance that a accounting firm can do. And it's noted in here. You can download this off the website. It says, we did not audit or review, nor are we required to perform any procedure to verify accuracy or completeness, blah, blah, blah. But however, what it does is it tells me it can be done. And I want to refer to you specifically to note 3. Note 3 is a calculation of reserves. And here's where it becomes really important, because note 3 references an exhibit. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with all this detail, but here's the exhibit. And the exhibit is right here. This is what we're missing. Future repairs and replacement, reserve component, roof, building and painting, all these things. Hey, estimated life in years, estimated cost to replace, the funding requirement. Okay, so there should be something here for every single one of these. And this should have been updated in 2020, in 2021, in 2022, and it should be updated in 2023. And there is a side that says this was waived. It was not waived. It is not in the minutes of the association available on the website. And I'll show you an example of these minutes. So if we go to home and we go back to owners and we go to minutes, we actually talk right through here, board of director meeting minutes, and we go to, let's use, for example, 2020, and we're going to look for the membership meeting minutes. Okay, in 2020. What we show is we show that approval of partial funding, yes. Approval of surplus funds rollover, yes. Cross-utilization of reserves, yes. Borrowing from reserves to pay insurance premiums, yes. Okay, we look at all those things. There is not one thing that mentions waiver of an audit. Let me be clear here, not one thing. These minutes were approved 1 year later. This is for 2020. They were approved in 2021, as indicated right here. That's a whole different subject matter in terms of approval of minutes. That just, a year, the drafts were never published. Drafts should be published after a membership meeting within 15 to 30 days maximum. Never were. We still haven't seen drafts from the 2022 meeting. Okay. So 2021, we know that there was no audit waiver. We know because the minutes don't capture. We then go to, let's look at another one. Let's look at the 2021 membership meeting minutes. And so boarded right here, the membership meeting minutes here. And there's not even a waiver of reserves at that point. I won't get into, hey, there's other things wrong with all those different types of things. But anyway, these were approved last year. Still haven't seen 2023. So going back to my table, when I talk about minutes missing on the website for 2018, 2019, no audit waiver must be done before fiscal year. 2021, no audit waiver and approved minutes. 2022, we don't know, but I can guarantee you it didn't happen. Furthermore, even if we vote on an audit waiver on March 31st, it can only apply to 2023 because the audit waiver must be in place prior to the end of the fiscal year. So from that standpoint, just know the truth. These numbers are just not sustainable. And the reason these have grown, I don't know how you can be proud of them growing because major things have not been done. The major growth has been in the painting reserves and the roof repair reserves, all these things that, quite frankly, should have grown and should have been done and complete. That's really where we get to these issues. And then I basically go into, we've talked about these step-by-step items. We've talked about these violations in the bylaws. The bylaws are very clear. The people in 1963 really got it. I mean, basically, members should have a voice. The board should have a voice, and there should be a system of checks and balances between those two voices. So anyway, what I'm proposing is I was denied running for the board because my dad was already on the board. However, there's a provision in Florida law that would have allowed me to run for the board this year. And that provision essentially states if there's not enough eligible people on the date of the election, then people can run as a contingent. And that's how I was going to run. But my voice was silenced, and I'm okay with that. I have withdrawn. But what I am going to launch is I'm going to launch a voice committee. It's Seeking Volunteers for Vigilant Owners Inspiring Condo Excellence Committee. That's what VOICE stands for. But I think VOICE is a good acronym for what we should be doing. And essentially, once we achieved over 500K in revenue, we had all kinds of different requirements that were put upon us. And the first VOICE meeting is going to specifically be looking at these items: financial reporting requirement, timely publishing of minutes, lack of formal reserve schedule, lack of transparency on reserves and contingent liabilities, lack of dating a member list and voter contact information, lack of information on the website. There's all kinds of things. Have a voice. If you want to volunteer for this, the only requirement is you have to be a unit voter, because we have to get at least that 51 vote side to call special meetings. So we have to start there. I'm looking for 5 people. If we can have 10, that would be fantastic. But think about this as essentially the oversight for the board, just sort of checks and balances the legislature versus the executive branch. I talk about Florida law in here and all those things on how, and quite frankly, I talk about our bylaws. This is how our bylaws are set up very clearly. And even holding the board accountable to actually doing the things that it committed to do this year, which we really haven't made progress on any of those things that were laid out in the December newsletter yet. So all these things, that's really all I have. Thank you for listening. Bottom line, let me just conclude, as the meeting's on 3/31, a membership meeting, and it's essential that we work together, that this is a membership meeting, that this is not a board meeting. That means members have the right to talk. And from that standpoint, I just want to make sure that we understand this, and basically don't let the board president mislead you. Don't let the continued lack of transparency exists. We know the numbers that she's trying to use as scare tactics are wrong. $2,000 a month, $2.4 million a year. That's 3 times what we're spending right now. It just can't happen. Her husband said $3,000 a month. That's $3.6 million. It just can't happen. You can't, that would be 4 times or almost 5 times what we're spending. So through financial analysis, we've revealed the stretching of the truth and maintenance reserves, the failure to comply with state reporting requirements. By promoting transparency in the financial correspondence, the truth, and even records of voters and membership, we can address these issues together, and we can have a long-term, stable community as we go into this new normal in Florida. I will not keep silent. I just want to remember I will be a good steward of what I've been given. I will protect the legacy of my parents, and I will do all I can to ensure Sarasota Harbor West will be here for the next generation like it did for the previous 2 generations over the last 60 years. So I'm already looking towards the 90th anniversary of Sarasota Harbor West versus the 60th. That's this year. And last but not least, I do want to address some rumors. There's rumors out there that I want a $50,000 assessment. No, plain and simple. What I want is a realization that $6,000 of assessments in 6 years is not proper and not sustainable. Am I rich? And should I look at buying in St. Regis? That's what I've been told to do. No, I'm not. Hey, I've got 2 daughters, both in graduate school. My oldest daughter has her master's degree. She's pursuing her PhD at Notre Dame. I've got another daughter who's starting grad school in Australia this summer. I told you guys, I have a rare form of cancer. I've fought this battle with people in terms of getting the best treatment in the country. I've had great success. I won that battle over the last 4 years. And as a result of that, I will continue to fight. But I still have huge immunotherapy costs that I incur every year. I spend about $50,000 a year in medical care. So I'm not a rich person, and I want to squash those rumors. My faith's been questioned in terms of my values. How could I put people at risk, let people out of their homes, all these different things? Again, I look at Sarasota Harbor West, the 6 acres we have, the 927 feet of frontage as a gift from God, my Father, and I want to be a good steward of it. Anybody that has Christian values knows that being a good steward is talked about a lot in the Bible. That's what I believe. This is being a good steward. So please don't question my faith on that side. I hate when I hear those types of rumors. The rumor my dad spent no money on the association. My dad was last president in 2017. We had $338,000 of reserves. It's disheartening to see those false claims. I mean, at one point in time over the last, many of you can remember the time when there was tiles on the walkways, there was AstroTurf at one point. He's done some pretty major improvements. He was the one who had the foresight to do the metal roofs when hurricane ripped off the building D in 2004. Metal roofs are now the new standard. It's the only reason why we're able to, quite frankly, get insurance now. And he did the membrane walkways. I remember if we would have left tile on those, they quite frankly would have been disintegrated by now because salt loves getting under tile on membrane walkways. We see that all the time in terms of porches, et cetera, especially in the enclosed ones. If you want, he's been pushing for railing updates. He's done all kinds of research, all those different things. If you really want to look at how bad the railings are, go over to D building and look at D29 and 39. Literally, you can shake them and they will move. I mean, that's how bad it is. And we just keep ignoring. We just keep kicking the can down the road. Somebody's going to get hurt. My dad fought for the pipe relining and all that type of stuff. My dad is the only person alive in this building that understands these buildings as deeply as he does. And probably actually Bob Bowmaster is probably another one as well. But there's a couple people, that's it, who really understand these things from foundation all the way up. And it's important to realize that the landscaping that we enjoy today, a lot of that was done under his tenure. At one year, they did 40,000 landscaping. Again, hell, we can't even get new bark around here under the current leadership. So basically, one of my favorite rumors is, hey, I want to be on the board because I want to get paid 50 grand to do it. Hey, I serve on 10 boards and I do a lot of other stuff. I get paid enough money to support myself. I don't need money from Sarasota Harbors West. But anyway, in conclusion, don't believe the fuzzy math and don't believe in an annual budget of 2.4 million or 3.6 million versus 800,000. Thank you for your time. I know this is a long video, but I just want the truth out there. I'll keep doing these until the truth comes out. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.